Hey guys, it's Marlene, and today I'm coming to you from my local skate park here in Calgary, Huntington Hills, if you're interested. And you've probably seen a lot of my skateboard photos before, perhaps in videos or in some of my Instagram posts. And today I'm going to talk about the L10 and if it is capable for shooting sports in action, like skateboarding. And I'm here to tell you that, yeah, it does work great.
Except my foot's like way back here.
Oh, that's okay. So in this video, I'm showing you all sorts of ways that I shot a couple of friends, and I've set up the Ace Pro 2 shooting me with using the flash, and also you might see a little bonus clip of me skateboarding, if you're lucky. Initially, I was quite worried that the camera would not be able to keep up with the action. I'm here to tell you that there's no problem at all shooting action sports, at least skateboarding, with the Lumix L10. Now the great thing about skateboarding is you can get fairly close to your subject, so you don't need like a telephoto lens. 75 millimeters is more than enough for what I like to shoot and my style of shooting. I guess the only thing I wish this camera had was a wider angle lens. I wish it went to 20 millimeters or even, dare I say, 14. I have a 7 to 14 millimeter lens that I use with my G9 Mark II, and it would be really great if this lens went down to 14. That'd be awesome. So typically when I'm using the burst modes of the L10 and skateboarding, I don't need super fast burst. I don't need pre-burst. This is not birding here. The subjects are fairly easy to follow. And I know the sport really well, so I know when the timing is right. And let me tell you, when you use flash, you only have one photo because the flash doesn't recharge fast enough that you can shoot a burst with flash. So with one photo, you have to be able to nail it. And I did take mostly flash photos for these examples. But when I didn't take flash photos, I had it on medium burst. I'm just going to refer to my notes here. Let's start with a high-speed burst. It's 11 frames per second in AFS and MF, and 9 frames per second in autofocus continuous. And I typically shoot in autofocus continuous. But with medium, you're down to 7 with AFS and MF, and 5 frames per second in autofocus continuous. And with low burst, you're 2 frames per second for everything. Now, 5 frames per second might not seem like a lot, but I don't want to shoot 30 frames a second. I don't want to deal with 30 raw files either. So for me, medium and perhaps high, perhaps I'm shooting a BMX bike in here, which go quite a bit faster than skateboarders, sometimes, not all the time. If the action's faster, I'll shoot with high-speed burst. Now this camera also has pre-burst, and it goes up to 30 frames a second, I believe, at pre-burst. Or it has 20 and 30 on pre-burst. So you may want to try pre-burst if you're shooting something ultra fast and you don't know when the peak action is going to be. For the flash photos, I used this little Godox IT32. This is a great flash. I kept the diffuser on and I aimed it directly at the subject. And I set it at minus 0.7 on the exposure or minus 0.3. So I didn't use full power because I didn't want the flash to overpower, especially when, shooting people's skin tone. I wanted just fill flash. I just wanted it to be subtle. I didn't want to see back shadows from the flash. I just wanted a little bump of light, especially when they're not facing the sun. Like right now, the sun's behind a cloud. Let me show you these beautiful clouds. Oh my gosh. It doesn't get better, guys. It doesn't get better. While I was at the skate park, I forgot to mention something very important about using flash with the L10. Now the L10 has a leaf shutter, and in mechanical shutter mode, you can go up to 1/2000th of a second. But you can also go up to 1/2000th of a second when using flash. And you don't even have to use high-speed sync on the flash. You don't have to set up anything extra. Just change your shutter speed and go up to 1/2000th of a second if you need to, and take pictures. It's that easy. And it's perfect for things like shooting skateboarding, maybe shooting the kids or the grandkids running around. It's perfect for close-up work, like, 10 to 15 feet maximum. Now I've tested this out with the IT30 Pro, which I have on the camera right here, as well as the IT32 from Godox. And I've used my larger Godox flash as well, my Speedlight, and it works. I mean, this doesn't even happen when I'm using my G9 Mark II. So this camera has a few extra bonus features that you might want to try out if you're getting the Lumix L10, and I hope you are. Just going to share a couple of the settings I use to shoot these photos, and basically I start with the shutter speed. The shutter speed is what allows you to freeze or blur the motion. So I typically don't go below 1/1000th of a second shutter speed unless I want intentional blur. So in this case I shot 1/1000th and 1/2000th of a second because it was a super bright day and I knew that my flash could sync at that speed. So I thought I'm going to push it to the limits, 1/2000th of a second. And also manual exposure, auto ISO, and I set my f-stop anywhere between 5, 6, and 8. I'm not worried about shallow depth of field with these things, guys. I want the whole body of the skateboarder, cyclist, runner, whatever it is in focus, and I want to see the environment. I want to see that whole skate park. I want to see where they are. So I'd like also to see the foreground and things like that. I don't want shallow depth of field in these. Maybe you do, and you can change your f-stop accordingly. And because I'm shooting pretty much at the widest angle, I also get more in focus because I'm at a wide angle. What else? Oh yeah, with focus. So there's a great focus setting in the subject detection, and that is called Urban Sports. And Urban Sports is new with some firmware updates on other cameras as well. G9 Mark II and S1 Mark II, and probably other later S1 cameras. So if you haven't updated your firmware lately, update it and you might find Urban Sports in there. As far as focus area, I sometimes pick a large focus area, and sometimes I just pick, like, say, where I know they're going to be landing on like the edge of the skate park, the coping it's called. If I know that they're going to go right on the coping, I can also put my focus point there. So it just depends on the subject. Also, I think I mentioned earlier that I shoot in autofocus continuous, but you don't have to all the time, because I find that even with a single shot, especially if I pre-focus and hold the shutter button halfway, I can nail the focus. And I've got so much practice doing this that I never worry about not nailing focus. I kind of know the sport well enough to anticipate, and that's the thing with any sports or action photos. You have to learn to anticipate the peak moments. Now, I don't always get it right, and with flash, sometimes there's this slight delay, and between the time you push the button and the time the flash goes, or maybe you've got the timing just slightly off. When you have one shot, your timing has to be perfect. When you have a burst sequence, you have more chances to get the peak action, especially if you use higher speed bursts. Okay, hope that helps. If you have any questions, you know where to go. So most likely you noticed that with the burst sequences that there is a lot of shadow on the faces of the skateboarders. And one of the reasons is just the nature of the sport. Often people tend to be looking down when they're, on the edge of a very large bowl, because they're going to be going back down in. And of course, this time of the year, the sun is always high and it's very hard to not get shadows. And that is one of the reasons that I wanted to use Fill Flash for these tests. And I'm really happy that with the leaf shutter, I'm able to go up to a high shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second without having to futz around with too many camera settings. I just put the flash on, I set the flash the way I want, and I shoot. I don't have to worry about, did I remember to set up high speed sync? Oh, I'm limited to 1/250th of a second, or whatever it is. So the key is you need to use mechanical shutter, and if you don't use mechanical shutter, you'll have to use high speed sync. Okay, that's all I got on this topic, but hopefully you noticed the difference in the photos. One of the things I've started to do since getting the L10 is make mini zines, and I typically take a group of photos that are kind of related, and this one's called Skaters. It's kind of fun to make these, and you might recognize this picture. It was in the video, and I have several other photos in here that were taken with the L10, as well as some older photos that I've taken over the years of my skater friends, and there's even a vintage photo of me on the back cover. So yeah, if you've got some spare time or you need a little creative juice and you want to just highlight a little project, you might want to make a mini zine. And in my opinion, they're better than business cards, because when you meet people, it's like giving them a mini portfolio. Here's the thing about the L10. We all wanted an electronic viewfinder. We all wanted to be able to put our eye up to the camera. But here's the weird thing. I've looked at videos of me taking pictures and I'm always holding the camera out. I'm rarely looking through the eyepiece. I'm rarely looking at the viewfinder, which is kind of weird. If you have an L10, tell me, do you use the viewfinder or do you use the back of the screen? Curious. I'm curious.